Alrighty, let's go ahead and continue this thing. So, first of all, the list of classes kind of got shuffled around a little bit, so we're going to have a few that are out of order here today. That's going to be just fine. We got the basics covered last time. We'll cover some intermediate stuff this time. And additionally, we'll be trying to cover them in the order that you run into them, with exception to, stuff that's just sort of next on the list. So we'll cover a few more and kind of continue on. So, first of all, the one that I want to start with here today is going to be the Vangle, because a lot of folks were asking last time if the monsters will get covered separately. No, the monster classes work just like everybody else. They're a class, they're a unit, they get put in this list, they get to be compared with everybody else. And yeah, so we're going to start off with the Vangle here, the first monster unit that you're probably going to be running into. Personally, I put them up into either A or S, because I'm going to start them off at S, and then we'll kind of compare them. Actually, there might be too many S tiers. But, okay. So, you can get them pretty much right away. It's going to be the first monster unit that you get from your away missions. And additionally, not only do they come with a bunch of built-in immunities, they also come in with a crazy amount of stuff that you can just passively train on them. So, for example, get a load of this right from the get-go. So we have move 4, jump 6, so they can already jump farther than most other things at this point before accessories. Even with accessories, you can make them jump crazy high aside from that. Natural crit rate of 6%, which is roughly equivalent to somebody going and carrying a crit item with them. Additionally, they're immune to Berserk and Charm, since Fortitude is just built into them. They also usually have immunities to Bleed, Poison, and Weaken, which are 3 very annoying abilities. So they're practically immune to DOTs. They're immune to the Weakness Remover, as well as Berserk and Charm, which are very annoying take away your stuff abilities, meaning that they are very, very good at remaining consistent regardless of what you're running into. Pretty much their only weakness is the fact that they're weak to fire, which many things will carry around with them. As far as their different tiers, at their first tier they gain Fortitude and Counter Thorns. From there they learn a Snapback and Lick Wounds with their second tier, and third tiers will have Snapback, Lick Wounds, Rally Howl, Stunning Strike. Now, with these different abilities, they're unusual in that when it comes to monster units, obviously they can have a ton of different variants. We're not going to cover every single variant because there's a friggin' insane amount of them. We'd never get past the monsters if we did. So just assume at any time they can start suddenly dumping debuffs on people. They can just suddenly start gaining the ability to fly and whatever else. Just, they can do whatever they feel like. Anyway, so going down to stuff that's unique to them, though, their main unique ability is Lick Wounds, which restores 0.8 Mind and HP to all adjacent units. If you've played Final Fantasy Tactics, this is Choco Cure. It's basically the same deal. They also have Fortitude, which makes them immune to injuries, poison, bleed, and weaken. Deep Wounds, which is their second passive, gives them their offensive actions have a chance to inflict bleed. That's important because if, for example, you give them the Venomous variant as well as, I forget which one it is that does crit, like, personally, the one that I was running around with for the longest time was something to the tune of, like, 40% chance to crit, plus it inflicts bleed, plus it inflicts, I think, like, slow or something, and poison at the same time. So they're just destroying things 40% of the time. Anyway. So then they have Thorns, which is exactly okay. Snapback deals 1 times damage to the target and exchanges position with them, ignores protect status and cannot be evaded, bypasses all counter abilities. Which doesn't sound like much, but this is an instant kill for anything if they're attacking from the water. You give them some flippers or something, some means to be on the water, and they can instantly kill anything that has water tiles. Rally Howl gives attack up and haste to all characters and adjacent targets. If you're wondering why I was rating the Scoundrel kind of low there, or not the Scoundrel, but the Peddler a bit on the lower side with their haste ability, it's because these guys basically get that plus attack up as one of their things. And then from there we have Stunning Strike, which deals 0.75 and causes a 60% delay. So this is basically the same as the Mercenary ability. Either way, very good at slowing stuff down. And then once they get their Mastery bonus, it's Attack 5, Crit 2, and Speed 3. With their natural growths, do they have them here somewhere? Interestingly enough, I don't see their normal growths on the wiki. Which is weird, but whatever, but it also hardly matters. Because one thing I want to point out about all monster units that's kind of hilarious is that while they're limited in terms of the equipment that they can use, you may notice that that list was a lot shorter than many of the other ones, because their lists tend to not be very long, which means that, for example, if you keep throwing them into away missions every time you go and sit down for the end of the day, you'll very quickly find them going and power leveling their way through every single class with no issues. They tend to have fewer classes with a lower amount of skills. Also, the dog is upstairs scratching his butt or something. That's what that sound was. Fitting. We're talking about the dogs here. Anyway, so yeah, in their particular instance, like, they basically are put in a position that they can power level through a lot of their classes, meaning they get a lot of these mastery bonuses very quickly, meaning that they just kind of build in a lot of those bonuses they would normally get from equipment in practically no time compared with everybody else. Like, seriously, if you go into the guild hall and you improve the ability point rewards and improve the time to complete or any of that from any of your missions, throw them into one of those every time you're done using them for the end of the day, and yeah, you'll have yourself a crazy overpowered doggo pretty darn quick. So yeah, I would definitely put them up here. They're not much to speak of in terms of defense, but so often I've simply put them onto a team only to have them completely demolish everything in their way, to the point that that defense was no longer really needed. That usually they got enough Alpha Strike potential going to just thoroughly demolish stuff before the fight got started. To my mind, they're like the dog equivalent of the XCOM Enemy Unknown sniper. Of just like, as soon as they have an opening, they just delete things. So the only way to stop it is to stop them from having an opening to begin with. And thankfully, while the AI units are strong, they don't get as insane as the ones that you can build, because they're limited to like 2 or 3 classes, instead of like, hey, I just dumped every single class into one guy, and now they're just an unstoppable monster, you know? So yeah, easily one of my favorites going up there. But yeah, we'll cover more on that as we go along. In fact, actually, just for the sake of comparison. I want to actually start off with another monster unit here, because it's something that's going to immediately come up, and that's the Ursini, aka the Phoenix. So that's also going, I would say, like, tierish. So this is the most convenient monster unit. If you didn't know, you actually can use your Beast Tamers, or your Wrangler, I think it was, to go recruit one of these from some of your early challenge missions. Which means that you can actually field an entire party of these by the time you get to about like 3/4 of the way through the game, because you can start off with 3 of them, you can recruit all 3 of them, and then from there you can just kind of grab more as they go along. Like, you're meant to get this towards the end of the game, but you can easily get those 3 pretty close to the beginning there. Now, on paper, they don't seem like much, so I'm going to tell you right away. I named my entire party after the pulverizers from Armored Core Last Raven, and then color-coded them accordingly. The reason for this is they just sort of show up and everything dies. And that's kind of their gimmick, that they're a self-destructing phoenix. Now, the thing is, though, if anything is immune or even resistant to fire, they basically become worthless. But for everything else, they're amazing. In fact, actually, I would argue they're one of the most convenient ways to reset a map. So, for example, say you're playing with injuries. Like, you can just go into a map, deploy one of these at one of the starting maps, go forward, self-destruct, and you're done. Because they will instantly revive. So either way, let's go ahead and go down this list here. So statistically, not really much to talk about. For movement, they can fly. They technically have a jump score of 4. Not sure why it matters here. 3% chance to evade, 1% chance to crit. And their regular attack kind of sucks. With their first tier, they get Sacred Bolt and the Turnabout ability, with a negative resistance to water and dark. But having good resistances to light and near immunity, well, actually immunity to fire, as well as some resistance to earth, oddly enough. From there, for Tier 2, they get Kamikaze, Final Chant, and Auto Rebirth. And then from there, we really don't need to talk about anything else. Now, going over to to their skills here. So Sacred Bolt is 1.25 Mind Holy damage to a target from a distance, so basically just a holy missile. It's okay. It's alright. Nothing too nuts. Hallowed Body. Increase attack by 20% of mind and mind by 20% of attack. Basically, they gain benefits from both mind and attack for all things. Just kind of a convenient way to kind of spread out your stats. if you're getting any diminishing returns. And then we have Turnabout. So upon death, deals 1.5 times fire damage around the character, so they basically self-destruct if they die. This means that typically the game plan with them is you go in, you turn on Kamikaze, and then you send them forward to explode. Just explode twice and done. Alright, so next is Kamikaze. Sacrifice the character's life to deal fire damage to all enemies. Damage increases the more HP the character has and the closer they are to enemies. So, yeah, you just go forward, and the higher health you have, the more you explode. Turnabout does not scale the same way, which means that your game plan at the start is just increase their movement as much as possible, send them straight into the middle of the enemy party, explode, come back, then they get killed off at their low health, at which point they explode again. Like, they're basically a missile, but it's a unit, you know? Then we have Final Chance. Sacrifices the character's life to heal all allies. This is basically like what the Paladin has, or not the Paladin, but the Templar. Healing increases the more HP the character has, so a more limited version of it. Rekindle deals 1 times fire damage in an area and grants rebirth to the character. If you get to the point that you're using this, the fight is usually already over anyway. And then Auto Rebirth. Character has permanent rebirth effects at the start of a fight. And then upon gaining mastery of any of their classes, or at least their main class here, they gain extra MP, extra mind, and extra resistance to Holy. So interesting thing about this is, just like the Vangle, they actually have the exact same benefit here. Ignore the random lady on screen here advertising something. But just like the Vangle, they are in a position that they can stack a lot of classes very quickly, and a lot of their classes happen to have both attack and mind bonuses, which, due to that Hallow Mind thing, means that they gain both of those bonuses, which means that they stack up their offense very quickly. So, yeah, you send them forward, they explode. The only reason that they're lower than the Vangle in this particular instance is just due to the fact that they would basically need movement items to gain a lot of their offense, and additionally, they really only have 2 attacks. Yes, it's usually all they need, and it is functionally a cheat code once you get access to 3 of them, but yeah, they are kind of limited. It is a little bit of... I don't even want to say boring, because it isn't. It's weirdly fun to do the same stupid thing over and over. But yeah, it's a little bit lame, that's for sure. Alright, so, that being said, let's move on to the next one on the list here. Alright, so let's see, what do I want to cover here? I feel like with the monster variants, that's just, like, the actual variants, that's going to have to be its own video here. Okie dokie. Let's go back up to wherever we were on this thing here. So we did Peddler. Did we do Reaver? I don't think we did Reaver yet. Let's see. This one, you are Fellblade, I think. Where is Reaver? Reaver, where are you? Or are you... No, Reaver's already up there. Reaver's pretty good. We did Reaver. Oh yeah, we did Gunner, and then we're on to Assassin. Okay, so Assassin, off the top of my head, is... Ooh, I feel... Okay. God, this is another one. Their passives are amazing. Oh, man. Okay. Temporary top of A tier for Assassin. But let's go ahead and double check this, because I want to talk about a few things about them. Because a couple of my favorite units are Assassins, but at the same time, they're kind of let down in a bunch of oddly specific ways. Alright, growths-wise. Good health, good attack, really good speed, going to 1.47. This is like double the speed of a lot of the heavies there, give or take. Now let's talk their abilities. So their primary attack abilities are kind of a variation on what the Scoundrel had, but in some ways better, in some ways worse. The debuffs are better, but they're no longer going to be using your weapon. So, for example, Blind Powder is effectively just like a 3-tile spread in front of you, that has a 75% chance of inflicting blind. Additionally, you have Dispel Powder, which removes all buffs, as well as Sleep Powder, that will... Wait, what? That was... Okay, I don't know if that showed up in the video, but maybe it did. Anyway, okay, so you've got their powder attacks. Those are pretty solid. If they hit, they're great. Like Sleep Powder, it's 50% chance. It basically does half your normal attack damage and has a chance to put something to sleep. Blind Powder is somewhat reliable because it's 75%. Dispel, It's mostly useful for getting stuff like rebirth or whatever else for setting up for somebody else. Actually, that in particular is kind of handy in terms of like if you're running initiative on them, and you happen to run into a situation that somebody came into the fight with a bunch of debuffs, like rebirth or whatever. So that'll get rid of buffs there. And then sleep powder is again cool but kind of unreliable, unfortunately. It is going to be a game changer if more than one of them lands, but it's a bit unreliable is the thing. Now, Sabotage is interesting because it's just like what the Vangle had, except at a longer range. So Sabotage, a character exchanges positions on the map with the target, ignores Protect status. So, for example, say somebody's got a magic shield of some sort up, you go hide in the water, you Sabotage, and then drown them. Thing is, though, and I don't know why this is, the AI always seems to succeed at using this. It seems like sometimes it doesn't drown them, and I don't know why. Like, usually it will, but I've seen several cases where it seems like a character, even without, let's say, any ability to swim or whatever else, just doesn't get drowned by the drown mechanic while using this for some reason. And again, I don't really know why, because it's supposed to. So, who knows? Anyway, so it is a very, very good ability when it does work, though. All right, next is a passive, so Cautious Step. Character is immune to traps as well as root and slow. This is very good for when you need it. Definitely not something you can keep around all the time, but very useful to keep in mind for your heavies as a bit of a thing to carry over there. Then we have something that by itself isn't amazing, but very potentially useful in combination with a few other skills. So Mirage grants Mirage to the character. A unit with Mirage will automatically evade the next offensive damaging action taken against them. And this basically affects everything. So very useful as a setup move, just a way to completely ignore one attack as you're going on forward there. The thing is, yeah, you gotta spend time to set it up. However, it's only a cost of 4, so you'll always have this available unless you're completely drained. Very, very, very good setup move, but again, takes your entire turn. You have the critical Mirage thing here, which gives you Mirage whenever your health is knocked to critical. I don't necessarily like this one. I personally really like running the assassination skills along with that Mirage skill, but then having something like a critical quicken. That way you can walk away and turn on Mirage, whereas critical Mirage by itself is pretty good for allowing you to survive an attack if you already barely survived an attack, so sometimes it's just enough to get the job done. It's like, it just makes them hard to finish off, but if you don't have the bulk to back it up, it won't have a chance to trigger at all. From there you have Assassinate, which should on paper be an amazing move. I don't know why it's so unreliable though. So Assassinate is 2.8 times physical damage to the target from a distance and has a 50% chance of inflicting poison, bleed, and blind. So the weird thing about this one is that it has... So debuffs on it are fantastic. The damage it does is fantastic. For some reason they seem to bounce off a lot of the time. Now, again, maybe it's just New Game Plus type of stuff, and that's coloring my opinion on this. I feel like most of the time when I see like a ranger go and use their big kill move, it tends to kill stuff. Assassinate seems to almost kill stuff and then get healed back most of the time that I've been using it lately. But again, it could just be New Game Plus kind of stuff. But this one seems, I don't know, for having a 3-turn wind up, it seems like it's a little iffy. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Alright, then we got Dual Wield, which is interesting. So character can equip 2 weapons or 2 shields at the same time. When using skills, the attack granted by the second weapon will not apply. But yeah, this is cool in that it actually carries over to shields as well. So even if you have a caster that just wants to be really, really tanky, you can have 2 shields on them, making it a good universal skill for everybody. Easily one of the best passives for obvious reasons, though. It functions exceptionally well with a crit build in particular. So, like, what's funny is you can actually combine this with Sturdy Grip off of the Mercenary. So if you want to dual wield 2-handed weapons, you can actually do that. Okay, I guess they get to go right up there with. I guess they get to go up there with Ranger. Actually, they're another really solid thing. And sorry, I keep scrolling up to whoever's face that is peddling some random pharmaceutical garbage, but Yeah, for some reason, ad blocker just doesn't seem to be doing its thing today, and I don't know why. All right. Let's go ahead and continue on. I feel like some of these are going to have to start moving down in a little bit. Okay, next up, it's not next on the list, but it's the next one that I want to talk about here, and that's going to be the Sorcerer. Because, dude, the Sorcerer is... Oh, okay. Initial opinion before we go over everything about this class, I feel like it's got to go down into D. I love it and I hate it. So let's talk about it because the illusionist is one of my favorite things ever for like FFTA and whatnot. And the sorcerer is basically that, just a weird version of it. So okay, growth wise, good health, good MP, kind of middling around most other things, good mind, good resistance, crappy speed. Their abilities are as follows. So they've got essentially a bunch of moves that are an elemental nuke across the entire map. So let's start off with Hailstorm, and we're just going to cover the rest of these as their elements come up. So Hailstorm, Firestorm, Meteor Storm, and Thunderstorm. These are all going to do 0.8 to 1.2 times either water, fire, earth, or thunder damage to all enemies on the map based on your proximity from them. So the closer you are, the more you do. It's just a big old smart bomb across the entire map, which is incredible until you forget something. Just how many counter abilities there are in this game. Because you've got things like critical cripple, critical silence, critical poison, or not critical, but like counter poison, counter slow, counter cripple, counter thorns, just plain old damage reflection. You've got, different types of absorptions, just like counter debuffs of all different varieties, and especially if you're on higher difficulties or New Game Plus, using sorceries is a great way for a unit to self-delete instantly. Like, I love the attack as a concept. Oh my goodness, do they screw themselves over if they don't get the kill, though? So, like, bear in mind, though, there is a smart way to play them that does get around this. But yeah, we're getting to that. And that's actually going to be the next thing on the list, which is their passive, Eruptor. So any turn the character doesn't deal damage, they build up a 0.18 times bonus to their damage up to 0.72 times bonus, and then the bonus is used up upon dealing damage. So basically what you do is you set them up with a buff skill. Like, I personally like giving them stuff like the Gadgeteer buffs, giving them a bunch of different like buffs they can use to go support everybody else, and then at a critical moment, that's when you drop the bomb. Like, that's when you go and suddenly sweep 5 or 6 units at one time. And for those moments, it's incredibly good. Any other time, they just get rocked the second they try to do anything. Oh man. Anyway, I mean, it almost feels unfair to drop them down here, but it's just like the gunner, really, in that they're like, they have their one moment, and then if you use them any other time, they get destroyed, you know? Not to mention, there's actually way safer variants than the Sorcerer, but they do have some other stuff. Alright, so next is Counter Root. Counters any offensive action by inflicting the target with Root, so anything touches you, you break their legs. It's just the mob mentality, I guess. Then you get Dark Storm and Holy Storm, which are just dark and holy versions that are slightly stronger of the ones we saw before. Then you have Void Storm, which is the strongest, deals 0.85 to 1.3 magic damage to all enemies based on proximity. So this is basically just the neutral version that just does neutral generic magic damage to everything. And then finally you have Economy, which is all abilities with an MP cost have that cost reduced by 1/3. So anyways, yeah, with all of this, with a combination of Economy and Eruptor, you have somebody that's able to cast their stuff pretty frequently, but you really don't want to most of the time. Because again, they will trigger every single counter ability on the map. So in theory, they are the fight winner when used at a decisive moment, and an absolute liability all the rest of the time. For Mastery bonus, they get a defense bonus, a resistance bonus, and an MP bonus. Anyway, so with that said, like, again, I know D feels harsh, but compared with, like, the utter simplicity of a lot of the other classes in terms of how easy they are to pull off their gimmicks, it feels like they kind of shoot themselves in the foot, you know? Might get some hate for that one, but we'll see. Okay, next up we've got the duelist. I feel like this is okay off the top of my head. This feels exceptionally B tier because their abilities are interesting, but very limited. But they're also very useful for a particular niche thing. So let's cover this. So growths-wise, they've got good health, decent attack, practically no MP. Everything else is pretty average. From there, their kind of big, go-to skill here is Falcon Flourish. Free MP cost, does 0.75 physical attack at a distance of up to 4 tiles. So this is just a weak little peck move that they get. It's okay. It's weaker than most magic stuff you'll see. It's weaker than most ranged attacks you'll see. It's exactly okay. However, that being said, they are somebody that's able to exploit a lot of weaknesses in the front. Think something like the Gladiator from FFTA. They've got a lot of abilities that have kind of particular purpose for taking advantage of weaknesses, but they also have a revive move. So revival revives an ally at 35% HP. What this basically means that they're able to serve in the front there and then just back up and revive. They're a good little pocket revive, as it were. Which, yeah, other classes can do that too, and you've got revival items, but the fact that they can do it indefinitely means that they can constantly call up reinforcements, which is potentially very useful. So they're pretty unique in that way. It kind of feels like they're just calling in backup all the time. So they have a very particular niche in terms of being in the front, but being able to call up another ally to potentially tag team in for an attack from the front there. That they can safely hang out in front, they don't have to hide back and kind of have everybody move in from a distance. But again, if the timing is right, very good. And if they have the right stuff to take advantage of a particular weakness, they're good. But their range is extremely limited. So, maybe find some way to work around that. Anyway. So from there, we've got Crippling Flourish, which does lowered damage and has a chance to inflict cripple. Leech Life, which is their passive that causes regular attacks to absorb some of the damage dealt. This actually means that they're pretty good with a counter physical attack, because it means that they gain some health back, especially with a crit bonus. Okay. Blood Mark, and this actually also means that they work really well with a basic counterattack. So character gains a stacking 0.2 times damage bonus from each time they attack the same target that they did last turn. So bonus resets upon changing target. So basically they just, again, keep on stacking damage against a particular guy. So this is more or less a free 20% damage bonus if you happen to have countered that target first. So, it's kind of a free build up there, makes them exceptionally good at taking advantage of any weaknesses they might have, especially against monster units. Stuff like Blazing Flourish, it absolutely hard counters dogs, so just kind of bear that in mind. Alright, next they've actually got a really good counter skill. Again, there's many particular skills that keep them out of the lower tiers, because their low range means that they have a little bit of a hard time actually reaching targets, but again, they have a lot of very particular skills for just sort of making it work. So evade skill just means that anything that counts as a skill is completely evaded, and this includes monster skills, so that's a very big universal thing. I would say this is probably one of the best evade skills that there is. From there we have the Flourish skills, which is Flowing Flourish, Blazing Flourish, Earthen Flourish, and Thundering Flourish, which are kind of like sword-based geomancies in a way. So Flowing Flourish has a 25% chance to inflict slow and attacks with water. Blazing has a chance to inflict blind and does 1.55 fire damage. Earthen does the same thing but root and it's earth. And then Thundering Flourish does mute. So between all of these, Blazing Flourish is probably the most notable because just a chance to blind is really good. A lot of stuff is weak to fire. So again, they're a unit that's very good if they're in the right spot at the right time. I would almost put them up to A, but I personally constantly find them out of range all the time. Falcon Flourish is supposed to make up for that, but it's a very weak move. However, that being said, upon mastery, they also get an attack bonus, a defense bonus, as well as 5% resistance to all basic elements. So that's very useful. Again, very useful class. If you build these, their natural speed is pretty average, build them up with something that's got a bit more speed, and maybe give them a bit of a evasion bonus of some sort, and they're potentially a very good class if you can keep their movement up. Really, that movement, that range, is their big limiting factor. They would probably be an A or an S if they weren't if they didn't have such a hard time actually keeping up with things later on. Early on, they're pretty fantastic, and they're really good at taking advantage of bonuses. Not to mention their bonus comes at a 1.5 times multiplier, which is fantastic. But either way, just kind of personal thoughts on that. Yeah, I probably should put them higher because they do have a good arsenal. Yeah, I kind of do want to put them higher. See, part of that is being colored by the fact that I was using Raynor as a duelist, and he kind of wasn't exactly built for offense too much. Maybe that's kind of throwing some stuff off. I don't know, but according to their skill sheet, they should be way better than I've typically had experience with. Okie dokie. What do we want to do next? Looks like next up would be the Mender. Where's the Mender at? I feel like that goes into a nice happy A tier. I mean, they revive units, they heal units. What else is there to say? They're a pretty good and reliable healer. Let's go ahead and compare this with a sheet here. So, growths-wise, good health, good MP, good mind, good resistance, average speed. From their different abilities here, they start off with Panacea 2, which removes all debuffs from a single target. It is one of those funny things that always threw me off about this game, that you start off with the 2 and then you get the 1 way later. But it's an interesting little twist. From there, we have Heal 1, which does your mind worth of healing to the target. Blessed 1, every time that they use a single target healing ability on a target other than themselves, they're healed for half of the amount. This is pretty good for keeping them topped off. Actually, I would make the case for having somebody train as a knight first and then switching to Mender for that particular reason. Just get some good bulk going on them, and the Blessed 1 bonus would be enough to keep them going. Or even get the Mender skills and just put them onto a knight. They're just very good at it. Especially combined with health font later down the line. Anyway, or from the mercenary, I should say. Mass heal, it's your typical area heal. Revive causes a target to be revived with 25% health. It's slightly worse than the Fencer one, funnily enough. But they usually have to stay in the back in order to in order to be able to go bring somebody back. They have a counter renew, so again, grants renewal to the target upon being targeted by any damaging offensive action. And they just gain a little bit of health back every turn. Renewal is a little hit or miss in this game. Usually it feels like it's not quite enough, but as a free counter ability with the class, why not? And a little bit of extra health never hurts. From there we have Mana Font, which is just really, really good. So Mana Font causes 1 health to recover with each step taken. This is actually especially good on somebody like the Marked, where if you give them this, as well as a teleportation item, and any kind of movement boost that they can get, they can potentially use a lot of their AoEs all around the map constantly. So very, very good ability for anyone that's able to cheese that kind of stuff there. Heal 2 for healing 1.7 times mind, Revive 2 for healing somebody at full health, and then Rebirth just to give somebody rebirth, with a mastery bonus of health, mind, and resistance. So this is exactly what you would expect it to be. A few little extra bonuses upon being able to heal themselves on top of somebody else. Nothing crazy standout, but it is something that you typically will usually keep on the team at all times, so it gets to go into A. Alright, and then let's see, where are we at time-wise? I feel like we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more here. And then I gotta get back to my day here. So next, let's see what we want to cover next. Actually, wait, what? Sorry, my mouse just kind of hung onto the thing and didn't want to let go. Alright, actually, you know what? I'm kind of tempted to move some stuff down. Kind of want to move Duelist and Mender back down to B, actually. Because I feel like this next one kind of wants to step in a little bit. So, Wizard by themselves is certainly somewhere in the B, give or take. But their passives on other people put them a bit higher. So, let's go ahead and talk about that. So, good health, good MP, good mind, good resistance, their speed sucks. Going down the list, they start off with Water/Fire as their first ability. Just does 1 times water and fire damage in a small area. They're going to be your first AoE abilities, so Earth Thunder is the second one, doing either Earth or Thunder damage in a small area. And then Smart Casting, which causes multi-target abilities to not include allies as possible targets, and helpful ones will not include enemies as targets. So depending on what you're using, Smart Casting is a must for a lot of builds. Additionally, then we upgrade to Water 2 and Fire 2, which is 1.5 times mind damage. Then Counter Magic counters any offensive spell by casting a non-elemental version of it back at the caster. This is yet another thing that causes sorcerers to get absolutely dunked on, because the AI loves running Counter Magic, and yeah, guess who's getting suddenly destroyed by 3 or 4 attacks in a row because they decided to do chip damage to the entire map. Anyway, from there they upgrade to Earth 2 and Thunder 2, and then we get Boon. Boon is nutty. So, upon felling an enemy, the character will be guaranteed critical hit on their next action. Boon will wear off at the end of the next turn, even if it wasn't used. Does not trigger if the target has rebirth. So, basically, if they get a kill, which they're likely to because they're using AoEs, they are guaranteed to crit with anything they do, and this includes healing. This includes counters. This includes even things like. You can combine Boon with secondary effects, or whatever it was called. I think it was like bonus effects or something from, I want to say, the Druid or Alchemistic or something. And essentially just kind of doubles damage for whatever their next thing is. Doubles healing, doubles damage, whatever else. Like, Boon is never bad on anybody. So it arguably one of the strongest passives that there is. So yeah, Boon is very, very good. If you see this on an enemy unit, make sure to target them first. But that alone is enough to put them on the higher tiers here. A lot of this other stuff other characters can do. They're kind of average about a lot of it, but yeah, between Boon and Smart Casting, they make a lot of builds work. And then lastly, we have the Locus ability. So Water Locus, Fire Locus, Earth Locus, and Thunder Locus. I honestly, if I could judge them off of animations alone, they would easily go up into S tier because I love the animations from those, especially the shark and the Zapdos coming down for Thunder. Gotta love it. All right, so they gain MP, Mind, and Resistance for Mastery, so not anything too unique there. Also, it mentions actually in the notes over here that Boon actually works for killing a friendly character as well. So you can set up your own Boon by attacking a rebirthed unit, which is kind of interesting. So theoretically, you could go send in your Phoenix, have it blow up, have it be at low health, cast some water on it from your wizard, gain a Boon bonus for the next turn, grant them an instant turn, and that's when you would go and combine them with something like the Sorcerer abilities with the Ruptor built up in order to go nuke the entire map. But the funny thing is, Boon is actually something that you can get from somewhere else as well, which is actually the last one that I want to talk about for today, if it's up here, and that's going to be the Gambler. So the Gambler, here, let's pull up their list real quick. The Gambler is one of my favorites, because the Gambler is like bullshit incarnate. Okay, so I love classes that just do weird stuff for absolutely no explainable reason. So, okay, their stats are as follows. So, good health, iffy MP, good attack, average defense, average mind, low resistance, and great speed. So, here's their abilities. Wildcard Spade usually inflicts a number of debuffs on a single target, ignores evasion, but has a small chance of backfiring. I feel like this is up to 2 or so. I wonder if it mentions in the notes here. Here, let's see. Does it mention? I want to say it's up to 2 buffs or debuffs that it inflicts on somebody, but it's just like a random roll of dropping a bunch of debuffs on somebody, and they can be anything. They can be literally anything. Sometimes they're devastating, sometimes they're nothing, sometimes they hit you instead. But this is the cooler version of the Gadgeteer from FFTA. From there we have Wildcard Diamond, usually grants a number of buffs to a single target, ignores evasion but has a chance of backfiring. This, by the way, is also how you get Boon. So, for example, instead of using Boon as a passive on your wizard, what you can do is have your luck abilities over on your sorcerer and have them repeatedly try to buff themselves in order to do something crazy with it, you know? Alright, next we have Fleet of Foot. So this is a counter ability, grants Fleet of Foot to the character and removes a route after being targeted. A unit with Fleet of Foot will have increased movement of +1. So this is what I was saying about them being the improved scoundrel. Okay. Next up, we have Wildcard Club. Usually deals a random amount of damage, ignores evasion, but has a chance of backfiring. And I also want to mention that the damage that this does is set. So basically, this means that it can potentially be a great way to get past defenses, kind of like a throwing rock. Okay, and then we have a Wildcard Heart. Usually restores a random amount of HP. You usually don't want to be using this one. Like, it's just not worth a chance of a misfire to have somebody get killed off when you were trying to heal them. That one kind of sucks. Alright, Pile On refreshes the duration of all debuffs on a target in a small area. So if you have them combining with something like an Alchemistic, that they're going and dropping a bunch of debuffs all over the place, or a Fellblade or something, you can keep refreshing those, especially if it's something like Charm, if it's something like Root, or just like anything else that's just completely disabled that unit. They can sit there and keep piling on over and over. It's an 8 MP cost, they're regenerating that every turn. They can just keep that up. So, yeah, they can just kind of keep pulling the puppet strings there. Then we get one of my favorite abilities, which is Initiative. Character gains a free turn at the very start of combat. So this means, for example, you combine Initiative with somebody with traps and a bunch of movement items, they run out, they drop traps right in front of somebody. Let's say you have multiple units doing this, they give each other free turns, and then use their exhaustion turn to run back, so potentially you've now put out 3 or 4 traps before the fight's even started. They all run in, lose their turns, not to mention lose potentially up to half their health, then you go in and sweep up with everybody else. So very, very fun move. There's so much nonsense you can do with Initiative. I love it. Then you have Lucky. Character has an extra bit of luck that'll help them succeed in various things during combat. I don't know what this does, but I saw that there's a notes section down here that somebody figured it out. But it supposedly makes them more lucky. Then you have Allure, which is a 75% chance of inflicting charm. That is very reliable. And then Quicken grants a target a immediate turn. So again, combines really well with that Initiative skill from before. So these guys' skill list is fantastic on themselves or anybody else. I love every part of this list except for their somewhat unreliable heal. Okay. Mastery gives you a permanent rare crit +2, an evasion +2, which isn't much, and then an HP +5, which is kind of whatever. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about notes. So Lucky increases the odds of a super good result from Gambler abilities. It also increases evasion, crit, accuracy, and seal by about 5%. Source, with missions and monsters installed, also increases chance to tame by 5%. Neat. If multiple units have initiative, the turn order will be determined by the last placed unit. Because player units always count as being placed after enemy units, this means enemies with initiative will always go after players with initiative. Also keep in mind that a unit's next turn will not come any faster if you don't take an action on the bonus turn from initiative. So yeah, that's also a thing. Let's see. Wildcard Spade's cause to inflict debuff is unaffected by Malice. Wildcard Club and Wildcard Heart cannot crit, even with Boon or the versatile passive. Quicken will inflict 2 rounds of exhaustion on the target, preventing them from getting any further turns. Fleet of Foot will not trigger if the buff is already active, even if the attack would inflict a root. Okie dokie. But anyways, dude, I freaking love this class. Now, I don't want to put them up into S tier, because unlike the stuff in S tier, it's not like instantly deleting things or anything. And it's... Actually, I feel like Assassin still needs to go under the Ursine here. You know what? Given how much stuff is on this list, I feel like... Tell you what. I feel like I need to put in at least one more here. So, let's put this thing up here. I just noticed that I got some work to potentially get done, so let's go ahead and see if we see how many we can work in here. All right. Next up, let's talk Alchemistic, I think. So, Alchemistic is currently loading. Man, their wiki is unbelievably slow. Off the top of my head, I feel like starting them off in A because the Mystic Shield is already just really good, but a little bit iffy beyond that. And kind of niche when it comes to post-game, or New Game Plus. Okay, growth-wise, good health, kind of average on everything else, except really good on speed. I didn't realize they were so good on speed. Okay. Skill-wise, so they've got Solar Magic. So, Mass Shield, Mass Aegis. So Mass Shield will just give you a defense up and resist up. Um, that's weird. Why does it combine both at the same time? I mean, I guess technically they are more or less the same thing. But yeah, basically just defense up or res up in an area. Mass Barrier is one of the better setup moves in the game. Gives you Barrier. So Barrier will basically just take away one debuff. So if somebody's hitting you with debuffs, it just shrugs them away. Mass Renewal grants renewal in a small area. Unit with renewal will gain some HP every turn. Then they have a weird passive. So they got side effects. So successfully applying a buff to a target also restores 0.3 HP. Successfully applying a debuff to a target also implies 0.25 HP. So the thing is, it's a very, very small amount. So I feel like if you're using this on multiple units, it could mean quite a bit. Or if you're, let's say, using it on something like a Gadgeteer, it could help quite a bit, but you would have to have more than one character running this in order to see much meaningful effect. Otherwise, it's nice, but not really worth the slot kind of thing, because passive slots are valuable, and unless you're running this as your main class, side effects just would not be something that I know I personally would pick that often, if ever, just because of how minor it is. And normally, I love that kind of stuff, but there's just so many good passives in this game. Almost kind of crippled by its own success. But no, as a main class, it's a nice little extra thing to get, I guess. Alright, Haste grants haste to the target. I mean, you basically have Peddler that's able to do this in an AoE. They can only do it to one. Mass Insight grants Mind Up in a small area, which is fine, good for stuff like healers and whatnot. Next passive is Resistance Expert, so increases their resistance by 32 plus 1.5. The value of this goes up exponentially as everyone starts using more spells over time. Alright, Refresh refreshes the duration of targets in a small area. Then we have one of the best counter abilities in the game, which is Mystic Shield. As long as character has any MP when taking damage, the whole damage is negated. Damage taken will lower current MP. So it's your standard MP shield kind of thing. But yeah, anyone that's having any issues whatsoever with bulk, this is just an instant fix to that. Especially if you give something like, well, and let's say you have a Gadgeteer nearby and you can just give somebody free MP. They pop their Mystic Shield from taking a huge hit. You go and give them a little bit more MP, and there you go. Suddenly immune to the next attack again. So it's a very convenient kind of replenishing auto shield, as it were. Or if you combine something with, like, let's say their mana font or something like that. Repeatedly running around, combining Mystic Shield with the Templar's Leech and Mana Font does allow for somebody to build up a impressive amount of just HP or MP bulk, basically. So if you wanted a great ability for a Templar, there you go. They become near unkillable going and abusing this. Then you've got Mass Haste, grants haste in a small area, so just an improved version of the previous haste. I'm not really sure why they have both. And then Soul Tendrils, which does 1.5 times damage in a small area. That's actually pretty legit. So very weird list of some stuff that's very useful, some stuff that's just kind of meh, you know? Alright, so Mystic Shield, like most other reactions, will not trigger off of environmental damage or damage from forced movement, so fair enough. Side effects. Healing and damage is added onto the base scaling of the ability or attack. If the ability has no scaling, such as Mass Shield, it's based off of the Mind stat. The healing and damage does not change based off the number of buffs or debuffs applied. The damage from side effects cannot kill a target, only bring it to 1 HP. That actually answers some questions. Interestingly enough, stuff can't really die to DOTs in this either. Okay. Which I suppose is fair enough considering how many you can stack at one time. But anyway, yeah, maybe we put them down to B. Like, Mystic Shield is amazing, but no, that has to be an A. Like, just Mystic Shield by itself is pretty friggin' amazing. Okay, next up, everyone's favorite, Plague Doctor. Let's get that up there. Where do we have their thing? Yeah, they're weird. They're like early game S tier, end game C tier. Is what I'm initially gut reactioning this thing to. All right, let's take a look. So apparently the Health Expert, which makes sense. So really good health growths, pretty much average for absolutely everything else. So First ability is Recovery. Restores 0.5 times HP damage in a small area, removes Poison, Bleed, Blind, Mute, Cripple, Sleep, and Weaken. So if you can combine them with somebody that has some good speed, this is somebody that can be a very good kind of quick healer of sorts. From there, we have Poison. Deals 0.9 times magical mind damage to the target and has a 75% chance of inflicting poison. Really good against tanky units and really good early on, where you don't have too many offensive options. Falls off a lot over time, especially when you have stuff like Vangels coming in. Like you look at the poison ability on the Plague Doctor, and it's like, oh, they do less than their normal weapon damage, which is already nothing to talk about, and then have a chance to inflict poison. And then Vangel's just like, I can do poison, I can do bleed, I can do slow, I can crit, and I can dang near insta-kill 3 things at one time. And then I'm going to get like 2 turns in a row. So that falls off real hard. Mass Slow has a 75% chance of inflicting slow. That's pretty darn good there. Mass Thorns grants thorns in a small area, so just damage reflection all around. This is funny because you get this around the same time as you get Knight, and the Knight has that as a passive, and this is just a way better version of it. So it's useful, actually, especially if there's a Sorcerer. Like, sorcerers are hard countered by plague doctors. I suppose that's fitting. Are they a snake oil salesman secretly? I don't know. But like, they go out there. They put on mass thorns to their whole party. Sorcerer attacks once. It's just immediately machine gunned down by thorns. Oh, I'm gonna keep laughing at the sorcerer. I'm sorry. I love that class, and it dies to everything. Anyway, somebody's suggested doing a Sorcerer Only run at some point, or a Thorns Only run at some point. I feel like Sorcerer Only is actually the harder one between the two. Anyway, we'll continue on. I should probably point out also, challenge runs for Felseal are super easy to set up, because like, as soon as you go to New Game Plus mode, you can just set up your entire file before you get going. Like, you can have every single unit, every single class, every single whatever, just like, whatever you'd like to have unlocked, no mods needed, it's already in there. Alright, anyway, inflict, let's see, Mass Weaken, inflicts Mass Weaken, so basically just makes healing not work. That's also really strong, very kind of specific to call that shot, though. It just basically makes it so you can't heal a certain thing, so just hard counters healers. Fortitude, character is immune to injuries, poison, bleed, and weaken. So situationally useful, very annoying when it's on enemy units. Good to have on yourself, but one of those things that's kind of like Steadfast in Tactics Ogre PSP, in that it's so non-sexy that who's carrying it. Okay. Poison Burst. Basically same thing as before with that poison thing, but now it's in an area. And its chances to inflict poison have gone down to only 62%. I mean, it's fine. It's exactly fine. Heal Burst restores 1.1 times HP in a large area around the caster. That one actually is particularly useful with with the Mender ability, the whatever it's called, the smart casting thing, or not the Mender ability, the Wizard ability for smart casting there. Alright, Permanence. When a character successfully applies a debuff or debuff to a target, it'll last one more turn than normal. That is also potentially very good. Potentially it doesn't get a chance to do its thing. Usually the decisive parts of fights in Felseal tend to happen pretty quickly, and they are all about the longevity, so it's weird, you know? Also, it mentions in the notes, Permanence does not work on Exhaustion, Focus, or Boon. So, you know, however that counts for you. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, they don't have anything that's necessarily bad, aside from maybe Poison by comparison, but, like, the stuff that they do have is pretty okay. Like, Mass Slow can make the difference. Mass Weakness might be exactly what you need at that moment. Counter Barrier's weird, because you basically have to get hit first and then you get the barrier, which I don't even know if I mentioned this one. Yeah, so yeah, you get Counter Barrier, which causes the next debuff to bounce off if and when you've already been hit by something. So you kind of want to proc it yourself if you're using it. I kind of feel like that one sort of sucks. So yeah, I mean, you get it pretty early. It's a beginner class. It makes sense for it to be kind of iffy. So sure, why not? Let's put it there. All right, and then I guess we actually technically have time for one more. Druid. So, let's go over Druid, because I'm kind of blanking off the top of my head what it does. Oh yeah, Druid's they're the magic blender. Okay, so Druid is just like, what if I went and just kind of like DIY'd a bunch of random spells together, which is kind of cool. I like that as an idea. We're going to put them into B as a starting point, and then just go on kind of reading over the wiki here. So, growths-wise, good health, pretty much average on everything except for mind. Pretty okay speed, though. Alright, first ability here, Heal 1, Bleed, Earth 1. Restores 1 times mind health to target, deals magical damage and has 75% chance to inflict bleed, and does 1 times earth damage in a small area. So you basically just get 3 spells for the price of 1 slot, just a bunch of kind of random, small, oddly specific spells for you to use. From there you get Panacea 1 and Thunder 1. So Panacea 1 removes Poison, Bleed, Blind, Root, Mute, Crippled, Sleep, Berserk, and Charm from 1 target. So that's why you start off with Panacea 2, because it's in an area and removes everything. This is just basically a worse Panacea. And then Thunder deals 1 times Thunder damage. Water 1, as you'd expect. Dispel, which removes all buffs in a small area. So you got that going for you. From there, you've got Fire, as well as Total Shield, which gives you defense up and resistance up, which is, again, it's okay. Like, it's a good setup move. It's fairly cheap. Like, these guys more or less are like a magical garage sale. Like, yeah, they combine all this stuff together, but they've got so many cheap spells all at once. So they're just kind of a Swiss Army knife of random cheap stuff. So it works. It works just often enough to be useful. From there, we have Adaptive Affinity, so when a character is dealt elemental damage, they gain a buff that increases their own damage output by 0.3 times with that element. So this is kind of what makes them stick out, because this also means that you can, for example, give them really high resistance but not complete resistance to a particular element, at which point they take a small amount of damage from it, at which point they can go and twist it against somebody else. So this means that, for example, their earth, fire, water, all these abilities here, if you hit them with this stuff, you can potentially turn that around pretty significantly. They can take their cheap stuff and scale it up well. From there, you also have Mind Expert, increases their mind based off of 14 plus 1 on the level there. So again, they have a wide variety of very small things, but potentially can scale them up particularly well. And then Double Cast allows the character to cast 2 spells during their turn, but at 75% power each. So I kind of feel like in some ways, if you've played Tactics Ogre Reborn, this is effectively the end game situation of the basic wizards from that one. But you get them pretty early in the game here, and also they have a wider variety of spells that are on hand here. Again, very weird kind of grab bag of different abilities, but typically they're always going to have something to do. Mastery bonus on them is going to be a mind bonus, res bonus, as well as 5% resistance to every element. Also, just to look over the notes here, when using Double Cast, you can move before or after using both spells, but not in between. Experience gained is reduced by 50% for each action, which, fair enough. Adaptive Affinity triggers if you are healed by an elemental damage when you have over 100 resistance to that element. Despite the description referencing triggering on damage, interesting. A character with this counter can even activate the ability by including themselves in the area of effect of their own elemental spells. Okay, that's pretty cool. Actually, I knew that you could hit yourself with them, but I didn't know that healing would do it. So, in that case, hell, just go use that dual wield from the assassin. Go and use 2 elemental shields on that unit and give themselves total immunity, and then scale that up to healing. Because if you go above 100% immunity, you start healing. So, fantastic. So we've got that. Do we have anything over here? Okay. I guess I can squeeze in one more. Okay, we already talked about Sorcerer. Boo. Fellblade. Okay, let's talk about Fellblade. Me likey Fellblade. It's pretty cool. So, Fellblade, off the top of my head, feels like a very A-tier kind of unit. They've got a few really good abilities. They're nothing really to scoff at offense-wise. They're usually able to effectively both tank and shut stuff down well enough that they can kind of hold their own. Alright, growths-wise, good health, good attack, good mind, everything else is kind of average, except for MP, which is on the low side. Abilities are all going to be different types of sword abilities. So basically, they swing out and they do something with it. Typically, it's going to be 1 to 2 tiles in front of them. So it's just a sword kind of stabbing out like a spear would. Right, so Poison Slice deals 0.85 physical to the target and has a 75% chance to inflict poison. Counts as a regular attack and will use the equipped weapons, element, and debuffs. Sleep Slice does 0.8 to the target and has a 60% chance of inflicting sleep. Decay Slice inflicts weaken, as well as, same old regular attack spiel from before. Then we've got Malice, inflicts the chance of debuffs by 10%. Miasma deals 0.6 magical damage in an area and spreads any debuff from the center target, if there is one, to the targets in a small area. This one is hyper-situational, but it can potentially win you a fight if in the right situation. Evade Magic. Character always evades any offensive spells, so this is really useful if, for example, there's a bunch of casters around and you give them really bad, like you give them a weakness towards a particular element or something, and then they can just constantly dodge it. Health Siphon deals 0.65 magical damage to the target and absorbs the damage dealt. Deals 0.4 times more damage per debuff the target is afflicted with. So again, kind of like a melee version of what the Gunner had way earlier. So not mind-blowing, but pretty good. From there, Versatile. This is one of my favorite passives. So allows the character's skills and spells to inflict critical hits. When the character lands a critical hit, they gain a portion of their maximum MP. So basically, this means that, for example, something like auto crossbow plus the war mage abilities technically count as skills and spells. So you use something like it was like an infuse attack or something like that, where you do an attack followed up by a spell. And then you combine that with a crit build, and then combine that with Versatile, along with the ability to improve your crit damage. And so now you're shooting like a shotgun blast of crossbow bolts, casting spells on top of that, and then potentially have like up to 8 crit opportunities in the middle there. So very fun one to mess around with if you love to see the numbers fly. Potentially also very good for healers, because it allows healers to crit heal. And then we have my probably second favorite ability of theirs, which is Chaos Slice. So deals 0.9 times physical damage to the target from a distance and inflicts any random debuff with a 100% chance. Counts as a regular attack and will use the equipped weapons, element, and debuffs. Will only inflict the debuff if the target is not immune to it. So this can be anything. So you can just basically stab somebody in the face and they're charmed. So that's pretty neat. And then lastly, you have Blackblade, which does 1 times magical damage and 75% chance of inflicting blind, which is pretty reliable. Like, that's the reliable move. Their Chaos Slice is the fun but chaotic one. And then over the notes here, let's see, Mastery bonus, attack +5, mind +5, crit +2, so great if you want to go for any more offensive build. Under the notes, when using an ability that applies a debuff on a weapon which applies a debuff, the weapon's debuff is applied first. This matters if the target has barrier. Okay. Every ability with Slice in the name can only target in a line. In other words, Slices cannot target units diagonally across from the Fellblade, which is pretty much there for the purposes of the folks that wanted to use stuff like the auto crossbow or spears for this. Versatile, recovers 5% of max MP when landing a critical hit, minimum 5, maximum 15. Despite the description, it works on special abilities in addition to skills and spells. It does not work on items, which is fair enough. Items have their own locked-in thing for that. Okie dokie. Well, my voice is starting to give out, so that will be that for now. So we still have quite a few more to go for the last couple of parts. It's almost like this game has a lot of classes or something. But I feel like a lot of those will be able to go by pretty darn fast, depending on what we're covering. But yeah. Actually, I should probably replace the forgot tier with something else, because we're using the wiki to unforget things. It's so hard to keep track of how many classes there are. Alright, anyways, so I gotta get going. Y'all have yourselves a good one. Take care.